Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Kathy Orlando, SDSA, and today I'm pleased to welcome set decorator Rebecca Alleway, SDSA, and production designer Luke Hull to discuss their spectacular work and creative collaboration on the Disney Plus hit series Andor Season 2. Season 2 is the final season, and it acts as a prequel to the movie Rogue One from 2016. So I thought we could talk about a little bit about that and just the preparation and what that was like working on a prequel to something that happened, 10 years ago, a decade ago.
I think it didn't necessarily wasn't the main focus of when we started the project. I think when I met Tony, like before, he'd sort of we're kind of hitting the ground running with whatever this show would be, and it was a prequel. It was starring Diego. It was Cassian before that, but more importantly, I guess it was more about trying to figure out like a show that was based around how you could form a rebellion, how you could form a grassroots revolution, and that involved many other characters. And I think it became clear very quickly it was a very character-based kind of project that he was doing. So it's like, yes, Rogue One existed. Rogue One was essentially a war movie, and this was going to be something much more domestic and interwoven and character driven. And I don't think it was like, oh my God, we need to work our way back from Rogue One. I think it was more like we wanted to make something that fit Tony's writing. So it was like grounded and more earthed and gritty, but still actually in a weird way, like because Rogue One runs into New Hope, we wanted to kind of hark back to something a bit more tactile, like the original movies.
And Rebecca, you had a really great conversation with Rosemary and Brandenburg, SDSA, I guess a year ago, about season one. That was a really excellent interview. We learned a lot. We learned so much about your process and that you built almost everything, which is extraordinary. And you had, I hope you had, more time than most prep time, because that was an extraordinary feat that you accomplished. But it was during COVID. Am I correct about that? You shot during COVID, so you were on stage primarily the whole season, I would say, or is that true? Or
that was season one. Yeah. So season one, we stopped, didn't we, Luke? And then we still continued to prep during COVID. And actually, I think in my interview with Rosemary, I said that was a bit of a gift because that was really time for us to kind of catch up, wasn't it? I mean, I did a lot of researching and mood boards for me in that period on season one, whereas actually we didn't have that luxury, did we? On season two, we were straight in. But the advantage was Luke and I had already done season one together, had a relationship, knew, well, Luke's relationship with Tony, it was much tighter. We knew where we were going. We'd, established lots of different things. So we were kind of straight into two. We didn't need a pandemic to give us any help.
Then into all the fabulous locations you found for season two, and just what that location scouting was like, and just the net that you cast for all those sets. It's extraordinary.
So, I mean, yeah, at the start, we did have a little bit more lead-in time, I suppose, like before or was it after the writer's room? I can't remember. I did a quick kind of European tour of like stuff that was always interesting, the stuff that always had a kind of Star Wars language or in the architecture or whatever. So we went to France and Spain and Portugal, and we knew we had to build out the wall of the Senate in some way, shape, or form. And so we kind of, like, apart from other things, the things we held on to were Valencia in order to be able to sort of build that kind of Senate Plaza world in a way that we could actually walk around and explore it. It didn't become sort of like slippery CGI world. So That was the one we held on to really, and then we kind of expanded from there, didn't we? We did the market in Jativa, and but we otherwise we were mainly London-based for our locations.
But I mean, you'd built a whole kind of model and world around Coruscant and the Senate, and then Valencia for you just gave you more corridors, more walkways, expanded the exterior, didn't it? It was a kind of perfect fit for everything that was built set wise.
Yeah, exactly. We tried to like take some sort of sense of established geography from the prequels, which was like the Senate offices are here and the Senate buildings over here, and obviously you don't want to change that, and try and find a slice in between the two that could be Valencia. So we kind of modeled that out in the computer and kind of did a cross section of the Senate and started by breaking, basically working back from how you would escape Mon from the Senate, whatever shape that was going to take. So, and then started applying that to the location. And then Valencia just kind of gave us more because it kind of gave us an upper Coruscant language, a sort of ivory tower top surface language for Coruscant that we could then use for where Jung's killed and also where Skolden's party is and things like this. We shot up a couple of weeks there, didn't we?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, and we had to ship everything out, didn't we? Anything that we built and made that we had to kind of, so it was quite a pressure at the time because we were still doing all our Pinewood sets, and at the same time we then had to design, concept and design all the stuff going out to Valencia because it had to be shipped and many months before.
Yeah, we're sort of basically shooting two units simultaneously, aren't we?
Yeah, and then shipping out to Valencia, etc. So it was quite a lot of work, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean you can't rock up anywhere and it be ready. Like so yeah, there's always a lot of work that goes into it. And a lot of like explanation because we're shooting there were three directors, three blocks that went out to Valencia to shoot that. So, to try and keep that geography tight and everyone's understanding of it clear was, one task in itself. And then yeah, it was an awful lot of makes that Rebecca had to ship out. We brought the limo out. It's a big circus wherever we went.
Well, it shoots so beautifully. I'm sure the actors were very happy to have such an extended set. Can Rebecca, can you talk about some of the interiors, such as the Deidre's apartment and the safe house?
Yeah, I mean, but Luke and I are very collaborative, and Luke comes, spent lots of time talking to everyone and Tony, and then a gem of an idea would come architecturally right, and a texture and a color and a mood, and we talk about character, and I suppose we go off and then both come back, and I kind of worked up a kitchen idea and bits and pieces, and then Luke was kind of working on all his kind of architectural pieces and light and the mood of the place and what it meant and where it was in the position of Coruscant. And that's kind of how we work, really, wasn't it, Luke? We'd kind of get into the nitty gritty of what a set was and the textures, go off and then come back, work together, kind of, and then we'd kind of come back and forth. It was it's a really great collaboration, and it never really disagreed. We'd always find an even better place if it was. Yeah,
No, it was just constructive. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is you've got so many sets and you're moving so quickly. We became very efficient, I think, on season two. We'd meet very regularly with like a specific set to focus on. So like something like the safe house was like, I think one of the things we talked about a lot was like the safe house had to have like four lives, didn't it, Rebecca? Like it started off being a safe house, then they tried to make it a home, but it was never theirs. There's this nomadic couple, and then it becomes like hellish, and then it's I don't know. Then Tony had this whole thing about it being under construction at the end or being renovated. So we had all these different kind of lives of the safe house because like we did with a few sets, to be honest, because obviously we jump a year between blocks, so it had that whole time jump that we talked about a lot too.
so even when we designed it in the beginning and designed the kitchen and the furniture, it was always evolving. So it was never kind of, whether the kitchen was aged or it was new or it was this, it was that or whatever, it kind of, yeah. So it wasn't just, concepting and making one piece of furniture or one kitchen or a bed, or it sort of, yeah, it sort of constantly it evolved with the set, and as Luke said, went with various construction pieces then coming in, or it was then crumbling, and then it was a hat, then it became Bix got into making it, a really nice place to be for Cassie, and it became very domestic. So it kind of went back and forth, didn't it? Quite a lot. And evolved with the characters. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of good character study there.
Yeah. And very Star Wars. That was that was a good Star Wars kitchen, I think. I got so into the kitchens. That was my favorite thing. Favorite thing from season 1 to season 2 was just like, how many different kitchens can one design?
Yeah, it's a very domestic show in a way, so it's a kind of a very specific challenge for Rebecca, I think, to come up with things that feel Star Wars, but it also functionally makes sense in our world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, what's nice, what was wonderful about the show is that, there was a language for the different areas of Coruscant, wasn't there? So you had, where Cyril's mother lived, to Dedra, to the safe house. And so these were kind of different levels of Coruscant. So
Yeah, it was it was a way of exploring the class structure of Coruscant, I suppose. So you've got like the top surface has the most sort of money and power, and then as you move down, you've got Edie's apartment that was like probably once quite sought after, but now all the other towers have grown up around it and occluded its view, and then like sort of Barbican and locations like that became good as a kind of heavy brutalist weight of like mid-level Coruscant, and then we didn't really go down to lower Coruscant. I mean, we had some stuff with Luthen and Young in the sort of in-between world. Yeah, exactly. So it was just finding those different, like, because Tony tends to write sometimes, like when he's hashing out a scene, it's like he'll write Coruscant like it's Manhattan, like, and so, but then you just kind of flip it because it's all stacked on Coruscant. So it's quite interesting to play with that verticality, I think. But
yeah, really, and gave us kind of, there was Dedra's was polished compared to the grit of, the safe house.
yeah, but Dead was like, wasn't really her home, like in a way that she doesn't like it's a government given apartment was the idea. So it's like a cookie cutter stack, and she lives in this pie slice, and the whole kind of conceit for me was that she had nowhere to hide in there. And yet she had this sort of like perfectly Coruscant home, but with no personality. So it was almost like her uniform takes her personality away, so does the apartment kind of thing. But which is why I think that scene with Edie and the food and the fun too is just all the more weird and funny because
That was fun to do. Yeah, I think the fondue came from just me researching into all the kind of 60s kitchens, and then that was, it was a thing to kind of, the food plate spinning was a very 60s thing to share your food, and then that sort of became sloppy sort of fondue. Yeah, that scene was quite something, but it was quite, yeah, it was fun. I just found a great reference in a 60s magazine, and it just sort of made sense with this, the cylindrical table, and it was very 70s. And yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't visualize it being exactly like that, and then the directors took it one step further. It was definitely even, yeah, funnier than I ever thought it would be. But yeah,
It was hilarious. It's a great collaboration. Really good work on that. And what about some of the other sets? The hospital is so beautiful the way, and then I read that you had to do some trick photography. You had to redress a bunch of times to make it look like a bunch of different wings of the hospital. So how did that work out for you?
so it's like basically it was a U-shaped plan. There was another set that we kind of canned, but like not every part of the hospital actually, but most parts of the hospital was based on just basically going up different floors until you get to Luthen at the top, um and that sort of action about what people can see and where they are during that explosion was very important. But yeah, essentially it was a kind of a mad dash, wasn't it? Because we were sort of shooting that and redressing and kept shooting it. We didn't really have anywhere else to go. So we had all these kind of, we had quite a few ideas that didn't even make it into the show, I think, if I remember. Like we wanted to do quite a lot of things in the hospital. We sort of ended up with what you see with in the lower parts. We had other rooms that we were going to do, I think, at some point.
Built that beautiful bed, the hospital bed.
Luthen's bed. That was my favorite thing to do, actually. I think that was great fun. I mean, it's really tricky. The prop makers and special effects and everyone was involved, weren't they, Luke? It was quite a big old floating.
Yeah, framed by that window. So, no, I think that resolved really his breathing. No, that was it. Yeah, because the idea was that the room was keeping him alive. So we were trying to tell that. Well, I was
right. I think that comes across. Yeah, it does. It was a really good scene. It was very spare, but I love the bed. And then, are there any other? I thought the Bedgo was really great, and just some of the street life that you created there, Rebecca. Can you talk a little bit about creating the food for that bodega?
Yeah, that was when we'd myself and my team, including the graphics department and the buying department, had started that months and months before we dressed it, because we had to kind of prefab it all in the prop room, because our getting to that location was really, really quick. So we had to dress all the shelves, and make all the shelves and make all the products. So that was happening for months in the prop room.
there was a crazy amount of stuff in there that you made that we barely see, but yeah, we sort of
but it doesn't matter. We're still it was still there. I don't know, it wasn't necessarily all going to be seen, but it was a lot of fun. And we did crazy vegetables and fruit, and every package was thought out. And
I saw a comment. Someone suggested that you put a book together with all of those things that you created, just to show people, like, the incredible work that was done.
Yeah, it was a big collaborative team effort, that one. That was a big as I say, the buying team and the graphics department worked.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun, though, that kind of buying.
A lot. A
really
lot of fun. I know we all had, and every day I had to go to the prop room and we'd play around with the shelves and see, and talk about color and change things and add things. And it was great fun. And then dressing it was a mad fight to get in, wasn't it? There was no space and there was very little time. But anyway.
Well, you had a location, so that says a lot to anyone,
Yeah, in the middle of the Barbican.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was the old ticket hall in the Barbican. It was very cool. They were gonna like renovate the whole area, so we slipped in and dressed it, did a build on the front, and used the sort of area out front for that top shot that we did a lot of work on in post. But I don't think Tony realizes what he does when he writes bodega into Star Wars. How much work that means for Rebecca.
One little let's just go out and kind of get a bag of fruit. Literally 3 months work. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you had a lot of great sets, Rebecca. You had the party, Skolden's party. That was wild. The dance. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but do you know which one I mean? Big party.
You mean, you don't mean the wedding, Chandrillia wedding? You do mean
there's
party.
That, but I'm looking at Skolden's party right now.
Yeah, that was the one with the sushi.
I think it was very effective, considering we didn't. We were quite tight on money.
It's a great location.
And you did a
it's
really
a great
good job
location that Luke found. You found the location.
Well, it was like, I mean, I like the location because it's like very much like you could land a limo out front, the whole thing, very clearly you could see in Coruscant up high. It's kind of a very Bond-esque kind of glamorous way to enter Skolden's then, and then you can do this shot outside the window, so they're just elevated above the city. But like, I think that's also in Valencia, so it's all part of the Arts and Sciences park, the Calatrava site in Valencia.
But that was a great fun party. Yeah, and we shipped everything out, and we designed obviously we realized we couldn't send real sushi or a food stylist, so everything had to be prop made. So
We made
all
all the
the
tables, all of
mads,
the all the
all the
bars.
everything was kind of concept and designed to an inch of its life before it went out there.
But also your stuff lit that set as well. Like the bars lit up, the tables lit up. It was kind of what lit the set.
Yeah. Also, everything was lit as part of the design. Lights were included and everything. So yes, that's true. I'd forgotten about that. Can we talk about the wedding?
Yeah, that's the next on my list. Let's talk about the wedding, Rebecca.
Well, Chandrila's like, I mean, like we've never been to Chandrila, but the idea with this was that you're actually going to Mon's family estate, so you just learn a little bit more about them as a family. There's like their Scottish castle in the mountains. We're still keeping the sort of Japanese kind of, I guess, flair to it, the that we set up in season one in the embassy, but this is, well, I just wanted it to feel a bit more historic. So we used a lot more wood and it became much more kind of architectural. And the whole thing was kind of based around circles anyway, which sort of then started to inform the kind of ritual of the wedding and how that laid out. But we had this one space that Rebecca had to do an awful lot for, which was the ballroom, really, which was like, that's the kind of, if I don't know if you've ever seen Feston, it was like, that was my sort of leaning for it. Like, they're all encapsulated within this space and they're not let out till morning, and it just gets, tensions just rise and rise and rise, and then it had to have like 3 different versions that Rebecca had to do. So
Incredible. This was a beautiful space, though. The courtyard, the marriage ceremony. I thought that, and the Japanese inspired doors and the fretwork.
Yeah, it's just stunning, beautiful. And the florals, are they silks? Tell us about the florals.
They're silks, and I have a great florist who's always involved with everything, and it was a reference that I found, and kind of Luke and I came together and we just sort of made it all kind of work together, really, with then the sort of plants coming down and then the ceremonial sort of floral ring. And I just did deep dives into different cultural weddings all around the world, and just sort of,
it was also a very close collaboration with Michael, I think. Like you guys, Michael's costumes beautiful, and the colors really came together with this.
They did, absolutely. His costumes are gorgeous, but yeah, we all collaborated a lot with Michael. We had lots of meetings with him all along the way, and fabrics and colors, right?
Well, this is the ballroom, so this is like sort of where everything happens, really, because the wedding spans 3 days. So the ritual, the tradition, and all of that we were trying to bring into this, which kind of just ends in a big rave, is sort of like what this space was for. It was an arena for people to see each other across the room, to be able to have their separate conversations, but still sort of glance at each other and play out this kind of like family traditional wedding, which young people are leaning more into these days on Chandrila. You made those instruments, didn't you, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, those mad instruments. Oh, we should talk about the Homestead and Minaret.
Yes. The Minaret, the Homestead, the mobile homestead. It's like a trailer home.
Yeah, the mobile home was probably one of the first things I designed, actually, quite early on. Like when we thought we were going to be shooting this block first, and then we kind of shelved it and came back to it. So we kind of, because we had to plant this crop and then wait for it to grow, and then we went and built the set out in the field. And it was like basically their sort of nomadic kind of little caravan, but also like auto parts workshop, which they would trundle around Mina around to fix various bits of equipment because they were there illegally.
So it would kind of collapse. Concertina, Luke designed it so it would concertina and kind of come out, live, and then concertina come together and then travel.
That's why the sides are ribbed like that. So they would like go in, and then it would be a cube, and it would like roll over to the next town. But so yeah, it was very much still. I think the key reference there was still like Skylabs, that sort of like NASA project with the central table. That combined with also like the sort of domestic sort of camping. Really, I mean, these characters constantly seem to be on the move. Yeah.
And designing everything so it kind of clipped up, the central table, the sides came down, fitted in. So yeah, like a kind of, like a camper van, a large camper van that everything folds away and then you travel with it. So that was fun having.
It's a really incredible design. I love it. It really is.
There's a lot of detail in here, though. I mean, all the beds, the cockpit's really cool as well. There's a lot of
Yeah, we that was a lot of layering after layering.
because then we had to take it apart and then rebuild it on the stage because of the strike. So like we couldn't shoot everything in the field for real, so we had to cut the crop and then make basically threadle it all into polyboards. Well, Greens did, and then we made the field in several stages and kind of rebuilt the sets in Pinewood and had to finish the show that way.
So we literally did a couple of scenes in there and then then the strike happened and we had to kind of pull out. Yeah, so that was quite a major, wasn't it? Having to rebuild it on, I think 007 staged in Pinewood was just full of.
It was where we stored the crop for like 3 months, yeah, to dry it out.
And it came together quite well, actually.
I think it worked really well. I was surprised, like we were quite fussy about it, but I think it worked really well, actually, surprisingly. We were not sure how well, but I mean the kind of things we had to shoot, we got most of what we could out in the field, but obviously some of the cast couldn't finish with us out in the field. So no, I was gonna say this set was pretty much designed around the fact that sort of Bix has her sort of scene with the Imperial officer who comes. It was about sort of having to, yeah, but like basically nowhere to go again. You're sort of trapped in this space, but you're sort of rotating around the central object. So it was another example of sort of like working back from a scene that you knew you were going to get, even though you didn't have all of the story. So also, I really wanted Wilman to have a hammock. I don't know why. He was definitely sleeping in a hammock outside.
And the shop, we did you don't really see much of the shop, but yeah.
You barely see, considering like we threw that up so quick, but like it was like there was a lot of detail in there again, and it was kind of grim. But there's an awful lot of detail and love that goes into all these sets with like Rebecca and her team. Because you have like different teams on different sets, don't you, working away? So
yeah, and and months of prep and designing and colors and painting and making and yeah, and a huge amount. I mean, I think that's why I love these types of shows and Andor especially, is because you get the chance to do a bit of everything. Sort of designing, concepting as well as running out and buying and adapting. But most things, nothing's you can't just buy something off the shelf. Everything, even if it's not designed and concepted and made, it's still purchased and then adapted. So everything you see has some kind of adaptation. Yeah, everything. So a hammer isn't just a hammer, and everything. Yeah, so that's it's a huge amount of work, but it's extremely rewarding and extremely creative and fun. Because Luke and I just and Luke designed some incredible sets, and nothing was small though, I have to say. They're all massive.
That comment seems to follow me around. No, but I mean, it's scope. There's an awful. It's like I think what Rebecca's saying. Like they're not small, but they're also like not. There's not an inch left unturned when the camera gets on it, because like so. It's just an awful lot of scope. It's not like one big set piece. It's like 5 set pieces, like to make up Gorman just off the plaza. Yeah. So in that way you make it go a lot further, but obviously it's a lot of pressure on the team, often to get things ready at the same time, whilst also doing many other things. So it just relies on us being, like I was saying, like I think me and Rebecca had a certain rhythm, yeah, especially by season two, that just allowed us to be quite efficient, and almost second guess each other as well. Like we sort of like Rebecca said, we didn't really disagree a lot, and if we did, it was only to push it up to another level. So
And then we'd get excited. So yeah, we definitely had a rhythm and got excited and pushed each other to a really great place with all the sets. And I think that's really the interesting thing. And also the challenge for me was, so the plaza, this massive, beautiful set that Luke designed, had all the composite sets off it. So, for the actors, it must have been, and I know I heard them say it was a dream, because they'd come on and Cassian would walk out of the hotel lobby onto the plaza, and then you go into the cafe, and then you go into the shop, and then you have the foyer, Cyril's foyer up to the workplace, and everything flowed. And it was, like when Luke designed Ferrix, it was very much a working plaza with kind of cafes and shops and life around that we built and dressed.
but geography is really important. I mean, it's like you're dealing with so many characters across so many different like storylines that I don't know. I do find that if you've worked all out how everything is in relation to each other, then it just makes everything far more coherent, and like you kind of you just engage into it a lot more. But that cafe, I think it's worth saying, Rebecca, that cafe wasn't in the script, was it? We needed another set of we were looking for opportunities to make the plaza, to get more out of the plaza, to get more onto the plaza, actually, because we're building this massive set. So yeah, but it's also a really good way of explaining the culture of Gorman and the sort of the year jump between a sort of fairly affluent planet to a repressed planet. And the cafe being like a cultural hub spot with them really quiet when you came back, and then all of these little details that kind of that Rebecca put in, and the sort of beautiful bar that she did. Like it was kind of very reminiscent of these sort of like northern Italian towns, and had a therefore kind of gave it that sense of tradition and insular culture that it needed, and also felt kind of sort of like a sort of, I don't know how to explain it, like artistic. I always said this, I want to be able to have coffee there in the day, but go and have a Negroni there in the evening. That's the bar, like, and it really, like everything Rebecca does, it's like, it's there's so much in there that even if you don't notice it, I think you are, as a viewer, buying into a concept, into a world that you understand, and yet also it's still very credible as a Star Wars world. So it's just very clever what they.
Which was what the challenge was for both of us, right? That Tony writes in a very real, gritty way, but we're in a Star Wars world, but we're also doing, but we're doing New World, and to kind of try and do something different that feels like it's real, but it's also it's Star Wars. And for me, though, that was a constant challenge, but also a kind of really fun challenge. And same with you, like, right, Luke? I was dissecting that language, and understanding what Star Wars is. And I think after season one, we knew.
It's like it's the amount of offices that we've written in, and you're like, oh, can he not be somewhere else? Office. How can we do this differently?
How many desks? I mean, that's very true. I mean, I was like, oh my God, not another desk.
That Senate office was extraordinary. Is that the one with all the desks? What's that office called? It had so many desks.
You mean Cyril's bullpen? You mean the Bureau of Imperial Standards?
That was impressive. It looked.
We built 20 pods, and then they were replicated. So that was one of the very only kind of truly visual effects ones. But we still built 20, and there was still a lot of, you don't really get to see them, but there were these amazing.
No, it's a shame, because I love those desks, but then you kind of made a Gorman version of them for Cyril's office and in Gorman, which was actually probably one of the first things we shot. I mean, you really do get to see them there. So
in Cyril's office, where they were replicated, I took the same shape that I designed in season 1 and put it into Cyril's office. Yeah, so when we saw them in season 1, they were imperial and sharper, and then in Cyril's office, they were kind of more Gorman, a bit more classic, and a bit more rounded, and a little bit more 60s.
Something at the very top of this list that I have is this Starfleet hangar. Can you talk about that set? I think everybody really loves that set.
The idea is it's like a skunk works, an imperial skunk works out in the middle of like some kind of frostbitten planet where they're basically building and testing new sort of TIE fighters or TIE ships. And the one that Cassian sent there to steal is essentially it's a TIE Avenger, but like it's loaded with like test weaponry. And he kind of gets in it, and the thing that Tony wanted to show was like he gets in thinking he knows how to fly these things, and the controls are all completely different and wrong, and he has no idea how this thing works, and he has to figure it out as he goes. So it's kind of like Flight the Navigator always was in my head when we did this. So we were trying to come up with a control system that felt like Star Wars and yet completely alien, even for big fans. So, but the main thing here, I think, to point out is that this ship is completely in camera. It's an entirely fully interior exterior build. The lighting and everything in it, all the screens, the door opened we took the wings off and took it to location. It's a full build ship that literally everyone from sort of prop making, set deck, construction, special effects, all got involved in and built this thing. And it sat on those 4 prongs in a stage in Longcross that we turned into a sort of like, it was our most Macquarie-esque kind of set, wasn't it? It was like I kind of really wanted to open the show with a very Star Warsy image and a very sort of like it was like kind of like a bit of a Bond opener again. It's like he steals the ship, he has this action sequence, and we're like, and then we relax back into the tone and pace of what we know Andor to be. So it was it was really fun actually to do this. It was hugely technical as well.
Yeah, yeah, really, with all the stormtroopers on wires and explosions and visual effects and the kind of, the rubble and, the before and the after, because obviously we had to then dress all the rubble, even though obviously the ship going to the ceiling is visual effects, everything else below it was then dressed with rubble, wasn't it? And just the kind of the order and working out how everything, the sequence was quite complicated.
No, exactly. We had to previous this Moan and TJ. I mean, they did like a sequence, and then we kind of had to work out the different stages that had to be dressed for the different stages of destruction as you're seeing now, that incurs when he's trying to fly the ship and failing. And then we sort of shot all these like insert bits separately on the stage on the gimbal. So it was all pieced together in the edit. So it's
so a lot of the rubble and the dressing and the destruction was us as well. So it was a real collaboration between, as Luke said, that Cassian in the ship on a gimbal and then visual effects. And it was such fun.
How much of the interior is set deck on this ship?
Well, it kind of collaboration with we did set deck do the panels, so all the panels it was a very collaborative ship, everyone was involved, so panels and seats and straps and all sorts. But
the spaceships in general and the cockpits I found are the most collaborative to a fault things we have to do on Star Wars. So like quite often you'd end up with every department trying to cram into a small space to finish a cockpit on a spaceship. Like literally everyone has to have their time in there. And it's always like the practical sparks, for example, that get like kind of like they have a huge amount of work to do, and it's like they're the last on the list, and the sort of aging painters and things like that. But it really is like one of the things that every department is involved in to get this to a point of being where we want it to be, really.
But you had a good vision of what you wanted the design to be in the ship, actually, didn't you?
I did a lot of sketches of like ships that were like you start off going, oh, I must come up with a new ship. And it's like, actually, this feels childish. Like I wanted something that felt stoically recognizable, had these kind of bat wings, but like really wanted it to sit on these 4 points. So it was kind of that was it's found this, it was the TIE Avenger that we kind of like lent into, and it became more about less about designing a brand new ship, more about doing a ship fully and properly and really well, and like that the actors could get in and out of, and we could take to location, and it didn't feel like it was something we put in the background in post, and so and it's not like it's sort of worked out. It sounds really expensive, but it's not any more expensive than like having to do it all with CG. So I mean, modeled it very early on with Max, one of the art directors, and then we sort of shelved it because again, like we shot these episodes at the end in the end. So and then an art director called James Spencer came on and just took it to a whole nother level, and he sort of managed the build. And then, like I said, every single person gets at it from sort of set deck graphics. I mean, Tim Wildgoose, who runs the prop making team, she's built a huge amount of things there because a lot of little things have to happen, and you've only got like that much space between the sort of inner shell and outer shell of the ship to make it all work. So it's yeah, I do like a challenge, and and then but everyone rose to do it. Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, the amount of work in the walls, I mean, everything was lit up. So there were panels around every wall. So we had to kind of design and make those. Yeah. So that was a massive amount of panel design and work went into that from.
You had so many control panels and everywhere.
Yeah. Yes. So that I always loved doing that. I kind of design a piece of furniture, and then you just kind of decide where the control panel was going, and then it would suddenly it's like, oh yeah, it's now Star Wars. Yeah, but I mean, with the shape, it's about shape.
We had a whole varying palette of control panels, though, didn't we? Like depending on whether it's Coruscant or whether it's Chandrila, like or it's
Yeah, we designed panels according to the planet they were on, so very much a language for each planet. So yeah, Chandrila had its own, and like the embassy in season 1 was very gold, and then Ferrex was orange and brown, and so and the shapes exactly. So we every panel was designed, for each planet, which was great. So yeah, you couldn't reuse them. That was the only thing, because they were all so unique. That's the only problem. But anyway, just meant more work, but it was still worth it, I think.
I think it really shows. It really does. All the detail that went into the ships that I've seen, they're beautiful. I've done a little work myself, and sometimes you're handed just an empty shell, and you just wing it. And you guys didn't wing it. It's beautiful.
Cassian and Bix Yavin, the big hangar and their home. That was a very cool set.
Oh yeah, that's a good. Yeah, let's talk about. Yeah, that's a great set.
well, I mean, I've sort of said it before. Like Yavin was the one bit of the project that I was, I'm not no least interested in. I guess it's like for someone who likes to create things from nothing, it's like Yavin already existed. It's very much in canon. It's very expected, but it's also like with the few things that already existed, tying them into our show is tricky because like Yavin was done back in the 70s. The set is sort of a certain way sets were designed, which was more sort of big theatrical set pieces. So it was trying to sort of like bring that into the aesthetic of our show, but still obviously like be close to Rogue One, which did a really good job of it, but obviously had a much bigger budget than us. So it came about more again like this thing I keep banging on about, which is scope, which is like the ability to be able to walk out the back of the temple, past all the X-wings, past the engineering bay, out into the airfield, up into the village and into the forest. So we kind of, I was at Long Cross, we were looking to expand there, and they had this big tent. So we took the front off that. That became the opening of the temple, that sort of iconic letterbox opening. And the skid pan up front, which is what they call it, is their sort of backlot, became the airfield. So we were able to create this sense of scale that I think, I guess the movies prior didn't have the scenes to do. Like Cassian running through the forest, down through the village, down across the airfield, and to realize Bix is gone, for example. Like this is where I think geography becomes really interesting because you get to explore Yavin as beyond being just a rebellion planning temple to sort of, what interested Tony really, like what all the aspects of rebellion, yeah, like refugees who have been displaced by the Empire. So yeah, again, it's another community. So, but then of course we were having to make sure that we, looked like our show went into Rogue One. And at the same time, I really wanted to tell this story as well, like with the year breaks. And I think it was difficult to do in the end, but like the sort of development of Yavin from, just the temples at the beginning when he flies off and you realize you're on Yavin to, we're flying in and they're like clearing the runway, they're like felling trees, the temple's very nascent, and then finally it's like the closest version to Rogue One at the end. So that stuff was really on our minds when we were doing Yavin.
And designing Bix and Cassian's, home within the forest, and you wanted to kind of really bed it in, didn't you?
Well, it's kind of like it's also like a bit of history of like how it came about. So like wanted to reference back to Canary. He had sort of built like this bit on the side, which was like how they used to build their houses in Canary, and then all the structures there were like they repurposed some bit of structure or like refugee kind of not even like what is it like it looks kind of tent like they're camping in the jungle again. It's like this is their temporary accommodation, and yet it needed to have some warmth. So I think it all stemmed from this idea that I just wanted the whole thing at night to feel like it was glowing. So we just worked back from that, which I think worked quite well, and it had this whole kind of treehouse feeling.
Yeah, and we kind of lit it. It became again kind of like a safe haven for them, didn't it? It felt very cozy and very safe, and very actually rather magical because, as Luke just said, he wanted it to become it was about lights, so it sort of lit and it was full of lanterns, and even though it was their kind of working and domestic place, it became quite a romantic space, didn't it? Safe romantic space for them.
It was supposed to be romantic. It was like, the closest Cassian could come to having a home before then Bix left. And then the idea was that when Bix left, it becomes a bit like a bachelor pad. Like hanging out, playing games, drinking late into the evening, and the whole look of it changed. Like, I mean, if you look closely, there's the plant wall and all of these things that kind of Bix has kept going, like that Marva used to do, and so she became his kind of anchor. So when she leaves, he kind of
Falls apart, unravels a bit.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you really see it very much, but I did a kind of I kind of got really into their bedroom area and sort of designed quite a sort of great mosquito net that was really sort of something like out of the English patient back in the day, and it was just anyway we kind of and any excuse just kind of give it a little Zhujian romanticism.
He also had a shower, which we never got to see. There was an outdoor shower.
Oh yeah, we did a shower. Yeah, well, no, it was a really cool. It was a great space to dress as well. Had such fun. Only a shame that it was actually in Longcross and most of the time raining, because you did have the feeling that you could actually be in the jungle dressing it. It was really fun.
I kind of liked that it was raining, to be honest. It felt more humid and jungly, and I don't know, I thought the rain was kind of cool. It was noisy when it hit that structure, but
There was a flash of the one of my favorite sets still of the Eagle's Nest, not the Eagle's Nest. We based it on the Eagle's Nest.
it was very, 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 very loosely based on the Wanna See conference. The sort of like, but without like getting like the idea was to kind of, well, for me anyway, was to reference a sort of more traditional version of what the empire then grew into, an old conservatism that became the empire's kind of bedrock of whatever its like sort of leanings are. So it's supposed to be like some old kind of castle like Eagle's Nest up in the mountains, and they're sitting around this table essentially discussing Gorman and what the various solutions, albeit the final one on Gorman, that they would be willing to go to. and the sort of 5-year plan. So, I mean, I really wanted the fire, didn't like this kind of sort of stone castle feel to it. Yeah.
And it had a great landscape outside. Yeah, I love the designing the table was a lot of fun. I mean, we spent a long time, long time doing the finish.
Well, I think, yeah, I remember wanting the table to feel like a coffin on plan, and then you made it into a beautiful sort of black marble table.
Yeah, it was black marble with kind of and it really kicked with the light above and them sitting around. Yeah, it was one of my favorite sets, and more food. That's the one thing actually. Every time we read script pages, I was like, oh no, not another buffet.
I like this one though because I remember saying like all the food should be black and white.
The more you do, the more they want, Rebecca.
Yeah, yeah. It was just like honestly, how many there were so many buffets throughout season 1 and 2. It was like, okay, now design more Star Wars food. Okay, and and buffet tables and yeah, but actually this had a real Star Wars 80s feel. All the crockery was really Star Wars and a bit 1980s and black, and yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
If there's anything else you want to talk about, any of your favorite sets, we're sort of at the end of our time in this list, but I'd love to hear from you just about some of your best memories or your favorite sets.
I mean, it's such a vast, sprawling second season, but the main focus for us on this was Gorman. It was one of the first things that we kind of got into, the trajectory of Gorman and like finding that culture of Gorman that felt like it was different to Ferrex. It was slightly more aloof, I suppose. And so just an awful lot of work went into finding a sort of like European flair that also felt Star Wars. I mean, even down to like what you just saw there, which was like news reporters on the plaza, like, instead of cameras, we were like, oh, there's little droid cameras that follow the reporter around. And there's just a lot going on that I hope people pick up on.
Yeah.
The ISB conference room. We should probably say what we're talking about. It's that was possibly the first thing I designed on the entire show ever. When
Is
you
that
think
right?
about it. Yeah, I think it might have been Rebecca. Do you remember? Like, I mean, we sort of.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and the architecture and the texture of the dome, I thought was
Yeah, it was supposed to be like an anechoic chamber, like where Partagas could basically roast all of his people that work for him, as a kind of like sort of, I guess, sort of CIA KGB operation that they were. But that desk was quite phenomenal. You built that with all the screen.
Yeah, and the chairs and the chairs were a challenge because they were cantilevered and sprayed, and I mean it was all but I think that at points along the way, the prop makers and furniture makers would kind of curse me but I'd push and go, no, I know we can do it.
Oh, but they're secretly proud. They're so proud of what they did.
Yeah, but now, but I'd like, no, but it'd be worth it. Honestly, it really does matter, that shape or this.
I mean, I got a lot of stick for trying to make that light in the ceiling, but we did it.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Gorman front, but I mean, that's that. Quickly talk about that.
Okay, I will quickly talk about that. The Gorman Front HQ is basically like, I mean, there's another way of sort of like, so Rylance owns several Tuileries, but the idea was like, times are hard and his business is going bust. So the idea of the HQ, which was a set that we built, which referenced the architecture of one of our locations in Guildhall, which was his shop, was like it's an old Tuileries factory, basically, somewhere where they either dyed the twill or made the twill. So, and then they're using it as their little secret rendezvous meeting room. For me, I don't know why it was like it felt very much like I think I visited Prague quite young, but just as they were coming out of communism, and like the kind of like sort of the resistance here wasn't. It was a bit more sort of intellectual. Like it wasn't so much violent or uproar. It was a lot about like leafleting and listening and like spreading dissent quietly. So that was a sort of like idea between these kids essentially who at first were sort of playing at revolution and then are quickly thrust into what you're seeing now, which is suddenly making Molotov cocktails down here and planning for actual violence. So it was a really interesting one to explore, actually. Oh, barriers, Rebecca. You should talk about barriers. Barriers drove us insane.
I had so many, so many meetings about barriers. I just have to say, in the build up to a riot, and the barriers became really, really important to one particular director, especially. And I had so many meetings about how many barriers we were going to have and how many we were going to build. And they were a lot of work to build. I mean, we built, I don't know, a lot. I don't know, 60 odd barriers, but they had to kind of do various things and protect the people, move this, that, I don't know. Anyway, there were so many meetings about barriers. And obviously, for me, that was the least interesting thing that I designed.
But yeah, it's always those things that catch us out. Like it's so funny with Star Wars. It's like you particularly with when you're trying to tell a story like this, there's so many things where you suddenly go, ugh, what's the Star Wars version of this? And like, there's just some things you just don't want to touch because it's just like you don't want to get into it. And barriers was one alongside like toilets.
Yeah, I did so many different versions of barriers, and it's really hard to make it feel Star Wars and not too pedestrian. That's what was amazing about this show over both seasons, really, is there was so much diversity and so many new worlds and so many textures and designs and different things that I don't think whatever jobs I do, what I am doing, moving forward will ever have that kind of amount of creativity and diversity in worlds. Really, that's, it was sort of absolute joy to work on, and with Luke.
No, we make a good team. Like, yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime, Rebecca. Like,
Yeah, it took a long time to get over Andor. I could have gone on. Obviously, we couldn't because
No, I was good. I'm good with 2 seasons,
Were you?
24
No,
episodes, like making 8 movies. No, I'm good. It's good. It's done. It's lovely.
I could have gone on.
Yeah.
I could have gone on.
I wouldn't mind. I would definitely do a Star Wars project again if it was ever offered, but I'd love to do it differently again. I think that's the thing, that there's a lot of hopefully different, fresh ways of approaching this. And I think we just did something a little bit different and a little bit more detailed and a different angle on it. And we found our own rules and our own language as we went through, and right to the end, to be honest, like we were figuring it out. And I think seems like people responded to that. But like, I hope that that's where that stays, and then whoever does something else with it does something different again, because
I can see why people are saying it's a little more mature or whatever they're saying about this season. But I think they're responding to the realism and just that through line that you both created together. That's just seamless. It really is. It's a beautiful world you created. And obviously it's like hugely successful. I'm so impressed with the whole project. This has been Inside the Set with Set Decor. I've enjoyed my discussion a lot today with Luke Hull and Rebecca Alleway on season 2 of Andor, Disney Plus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Too. Yeah, it was a great pleasure. Really fun talking to you.
Really a pleasure to meet both of you and to have this discussion.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.